Hey guys, it's Ryan from The Surfer's Journey. I made a video a few years ago called Learn How to Surf in 10 Minutes. Well, this is like a follow-up to that, but it focuses on how you actually progress from a beginner level and how you get to an intermediate level. Making that progression, in my opinion, has to be the hardest and most confusing step for many surfers out there. How do we go from standing up and riding the whitewater to riding along a wave and performing maneuvers? Well, there's a lot to that, and today's video aims to break it all down, so we better get to it. Let's go. Let's start by having a quick look at the foundations of turning. What are the key things we need to do? Rotation, looking, leaning, compression and extension, and using your arms. All of these are key points that we're going to focus on, and they're all underpinned by speed. You must have speed. It's going to make everything so much easier. And a little bit later in the video, I'm going to talk about what we need to do to generate and maintain our speed. And guys, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe now. And remember to follow us on Instagram and check out our website at www.thesurfersjourney.com.au. But for now, let's get into today's lesson of the week. Now, the first step for a beginner surfer to progress to an intermediate level is that you need to get from the whitewater to riding on the face. I'm not going to talk heaps about this because I'm assuming at this point, if you're looking at making that progression, that you're close to this. So we're going to quickly touch on how to catch a green wave, an unbroken wave, and then once we've got that down, we can then unlock a whole range of opportunities to get you turning, generating speed, trimming, all of the good stuff. In order to catch unbroken waves, we need to position ourselves out the back. We can't be in close to shore anymore, where potentially you've been catching the whitewater. Now we need to get out the back. Now, to do this and to know exactly where we need to sit in order to catch the best waves possible and take off in the best spot possible, we need to perform a pre-surf analysis, where we spend about 10 to 15 minutes watching the conditions and we find the best spot to surf. Once we've done that and we've selected a landmark that coincides with where we want to sit, where we've seen the best waves, and that's where we're going to spend the most of our surf session, then we're going to get out there. You can utilize skills like duck diving and turtle rolls to get out there. And we'll talk about those skills in another video that I'll link in the comments. But once we actually get out there, what are we looking for? Well, we want to take off on the peak of the wave, which is basically the steepest section like you can see here. And if I look down the line of the wave or down the face, you can see that it's fatter and flatter. That's a good indication to me that that wave's going to run and give me the opportunity to ride along the face like this. And remember that when we paddle into an unbroken wave, we're looking at paddling into it on a slight angle. And now that I'm up and riding, you can see what I have to work with. I've got a canvas, I've got this wave face, and this is what we can use to turn on. If we didn't have this and we take off on a wave, which when we paddle in is very steep the whole way along, they often result in a closeout. So it's very important that you work on your wave selection. And when you're paddling for an unbroken wave, you want to make sure that you give yourself ample time where you've spotted the wave you want to catch. You've given yourself about 5 to 10 seconds of getting yourself into the perfect position where you're paddling with urgency. And the earlier that you actually take off and get to your feet and perform your pop-up is going to make the whole experience a lot easier. The next thing to discuss is where we take off on the wave. We want to take off on the peak, like I said. If we take off behind the peak, we're too deep. If we take off too far on the shoulder, we're going to miss turning opportunities. However, in the early days, you might choose to do that because it's easier and generally less steep. But in this example, you can see the benefits of taking off on the peak. I get to maximize my position on the wave, maximize my speed, and then I've got room to move. I can perform this bottom turn to top turn combo. Essentially, by taking off on the peak, you'll put yourself in the best position to maximize the sections on that wave and have the most speed possible. So now that you understand how to catch an unbroken wave and what we're looking for in regards to peak positioning and wave selection, now we can talk about what comes next. Once you can actually catch those waves, what do you do then? Well, the first thing is to get comfortable just riding along the face. And we want to start to do something called trimming. So let's have a closer look at what trimming is. In this example here, you can see at the very early stages of this wave that this surfer wasn't doing a whole lot. It was just basically standing there. But here you can see he started to trim and almost doing a little bit of speed generation. Now, trimming is a really good skill that you want to learn as soon as possible. Once you can ride along a wave, the next step is trimming. That's where you're starting to use that weight transition from toes to your heels and vice versa. You're also starting to engage some movement with your torso, and you're thinking about rotating your upper body. You're thinking about where you're looking, and your goal should be to stay in the middle of the wave face. That's where you're going to have a nice amount of power to ride along the wave. If you're too low on a wave, it's dead. There's not enough speed down there. If you're too high on the wave, it can be steeper, the lip can be breaking, it can be a little bit trickier. So the middle is where we want to be when we're performing our trimming. Once we can trim along a wave and we're getting used to that slight transition of weight onto our toes and heels and a little bit of an extension and a little bit of compression, and we're starting to use our upper body a little bit, and we can feel that connection between where we look, where we're going, where we're pointing, rotating, leaning, all of those things. Now we can take it to the next level, which is speed generation. Generating speed is a crucial skill for any surfer, especially those who want to progress to an intermediate level. More speed equals easier results for your maneuvers. The way that we do it is by using compression and extension and transitioning our weight onto our toes and onto our heels. Now you can see here at the bottom of the wave I'm slightly compressed, and then I'm extending up as I go up to the mid-face, up to high on the wave. I've extended my body and I've thrown my arms. Then I reset again. I come down to that mid-face, bottom of the wave to then perform another speed pump. If we have a look at another example here, you can see how the surfer does his speed pump high on the wave. We want to stay to that high mid-face to the low mid-face. Not too high and not too low, but right in the middle. And as a rule of thumb, remember that 2 speed pumps is generally all you want to use before you perform a maneuver. If you perform many more than that, you may actually waste opportunities. On this wave here, we see an example of speed generation on our backhand. Essentially, we're doing the same movements, but things just look a little bit different. Remember that what we're doing is we are extending our body as we transition our weight up onto that wave. So I'm standing straighter as I throw my arms to create weightlessness as I transition that weight. So there's a lot of things happening at the same time. And as I come down, I compress slightly, my arms come down, and like a coiled spring, I'm loading, ready to go again. As I mentioned at the very start of the video, without speed you cannot do anything, and speed is the essence of good surfing. So now that you understand what speed generation is and hopefully you can perform it, well, now we need to know what to do with that speed. The first thing we're going to look at are the 2 most basic maneuvers that really tie in together well, which is a bottom turn and a carve. No maneuver can be performed without a successful bottom turn. As you can see here, all of these maneuvers, carves, snaps, re-entries, they're all coming with a bottom turn. It's how we get to the top of the wave, it's how we maintain our speed that we've generated. Let's discuss how we perform bottom turns. When we take off on a wave, we drop down to the bottom of the wave in a slightly compressed position, and we look and point to where we want to go, and we are leaning and we hold that lean until we start to come out to the mid-face. At that point we start to extend as we go up to the top of the wave to perform our maneuvers. Now when you're performing carves or any turn, you want to perform them high and tight on the wave, so we're close to that pocket, close to the power source of the wave, that braking part. Our turns will look better and feel a lot better. Once we get to the top of the wave, we simply do the same in reverse. We compress, we look, we lean, we rotate to wherever we want to go. Now when we're performing carves, we can change the intensity of the carve by where we look and where we rotate to. So if I want to do a short carve, and in the early days you may choose to do this just to get comfortable with that weight transition, it might just be that I'm going to go to the top of the wave and then I'm going to look down the line to the bottom. It'll be a very slight change of direction, which will result in a small carve. If I want to make that bigger, I'll look straight down to the beach, which will make it longer again. And then if I want to go even further, I can look back to the broken part of the wave, back to the whitewater, keeping my board on rail, keeping me leaning, keeping me looking, keeping me rotating, keeping me pointing. My arms are going where I want to go, and I'll keep the board on rail for longer, resulting in a bigger, more impressive carve that'll hopefully feel a lot better. And whenever we finish our maneuvers, we compress low. So we enter those maneuvers in compression, we extend our bodies through that maneuver while we're looking, leaning, rotating, pointing, and then as that maneuver comes to an end, we compress low to finish. On this turn here, you can see the same principles applied, but now I'm performing this carve on a steeper section, which allows me to release the tail performing this slide here. Essentially, the body mechanics are the same. You can see how I've looked, I've leant, I've compressed, I've extended, but the section that we actually perform that maneuver on will have a massive influence on how big and how critical that carve is. And in the early days, I would recommend that you perform these carves when you're learning them on fatter, flatter sections. It's going to be easier, and we can do something like this. So you can see here I'm looking down the line, which is resulting in a shorter, less impressive maneuver. You can see the same thing happening here again. I'm looking, pointing, rotating, and it's a very short maneuver. But further down the line, you can see I want to lengthen that maneuver. So now I'm going to lean for longer. I'm going to look, rotate, point all the way back to the foam. And you guys can see the end result. Let's have a look at a few more examples. If we have a look through some point of view, you can see exactly what I'm looking for when I'm performing a carve. So I take off on the wave, I've done one speed pump here. Now, every wave's different, that's what I've done here. I then perform my bottom turn. You can see I'm clearly pointing and looking as I'm coming out of that bottom turn to where I want to go. Remember, we want to be high and tight. Now I'm looking, leaning, rotating back to the foam. You can see the nose of my board is going to exactly where I wanted to, and I perform that carve successfully. In this example here, you see the same thing happening. Bottom turns to top turns. It's very simple when you think about it. We're looking, we're leaning, we're rotating, we're using compression and extension all together in sync to perform these maneuvers. Of course, it's going to take time to get it right, but I can promise that once you start to feel it and things start to work for you, you'll be able to feel the difference. Let's have a look at a few examples on my backhand. You can see that essentially we're doing very similar things, but the mechanics are slightly different, obviously being on my backhand. I drop into this wave, again I'm dropping down to the bottom of the wave once I've got enough speed. And again, I'm looking, I'm pointing, leaning, rotating to where I want to go, high and tight. You can see that once I get to the top of the wave out of my bottom turn, I'm looking and pointing back to the power source as far as I want to go with that maneuver. We've already discussed what we need to do to change the intensity of the maneuver based on where we're looking and where we're pointing. But on the backhand, notice what my back arm is doing, my right arm. You'll see that as I come out of this maneuver, out of my bottom turn, I'm at the top of the wave, but my right arm actually comes behind me as my front arm is pointing to where I want to go, and then my right arm comes back. This creates torque that goes down into the board, which results in a more reactive, more powerful maneuver. If you didn't do that, it'll feel flat, heavy, and slow. So it's really important to work on that skill of when you point with your front arm, your back arm actually goes back and then comes back pointing forward again. At this point, if you can generate speed effectively, you can perform a bottom turn, and you can perform a carve, you are well on your way to an intermediate level. In fact, I would say that you're pretty much there at this stage. The next step from here is to make your carves longer, going all the way to perform a roundhouse cutback. This is slightly more critical now because when we come back and we hit the foam, we're performing a rebound or almost a re-entry on the foam. So now we're going to talk about that and re-entries. Let's have a look at an example of a roundhouse cutback on my forehand. You can see I drop down, perform that bottom turn, and then hold that carving-like technique the whole way around, all the way back to the foam. If we have a look at POV footage, you can see I've gone all the way back and I'm clearly looking at that foamy section to put my board up on top of it. If we break that point of view footage down, you can see that I perform a bottom turn. This time I'm going quite horizontally because the section is always fatter and flatter when we perform a roundhouse cutback. Now I keep the board on rail. I'm looking, leaning, rotating. As I extend through that, I'm still looking and I want my front arm, that left arm, to point to the top of the foam because that's where I want the board to go. And then I rotate and look back to head back in the direction that I just came from. If we have a look at an example on my backhand, you can see the same things happening again. I spot this section, I bottom turn up to the lip, and again, generally with roundhouse cutbacks, it's a fatter, flatter section. If fat, cut back, and then I hold that rail, and I'm looking and I'm pointing to the top of that foamy section. I've put the board up to perform that re-entry, and again, I look and rotate to where I want the board to go, which is towards the beach, to finish that maneuver. So all we're doing when we perform a roundhouse cutback is performing a really long carve, all the way back to the foam, while we perform that re-entry. On this wave here, you can see me finishing with a really basic, really simple re-entry at the end. And essentially to perform it, you can see I've done a bottom turn. I've put my board up now, so it's a bit more vertical. And what's happening is the board goes up, the wave hits the bottom of our board. As we look and rotate, the wave hits it and knocks us back down. So it's really important that we get that rotation right. If we have a look from point of view footage, I think it makes things a little bit clearer. When we perform re-entries, we need a steeper section that has a lip which almost acts as a coping, similar for a skateboarder. So it's a steeper section now. We need the steeper section to put our board up. You can't do re-entries on flat sections. Again, I'm bottom turning and pointing to where I want to go. Now ideally we want our front foot above the lip and we want to look and rotate to where we want the board to go before the wave hits the board. On this wave here, you can see the same thing happening again, but on this one here, this is a more simple version of re-entry. The previous one, from that point of view footage, I pushed out my back foot, which resulted in a fin release, but we'll get to those a little bit later. If we have a look on our backhand, things are similar, but a bit different again. So as I finish this maneuver, I'm going to drop down to my bottom turn, and I want to try and spot that section. So I'm looking, I'm leaning, I'm rotating, but notice how my front arm, my left arm, have thrown that up high. Now wherever my arm's gone, if it's at 12 o'clock, my board will follow. So this is a really important skill to learn. And again, we want to look and rotate back down towards the direction we want the board to go before the board hits the lip. If we get there too early or too late, there's a good chance things won't work out for us. If we have a look at point of view, we can see that again. So I'm at the bottom of the wave, I've got my speed, and I'm bottom turning. I've spot that section. Now I'm rotating with my upper body here. It's not just my front arm being thrown up to where I want the board to go. You can see that here. My back arm, my right arm, is coming all the way around to create more tension, more torque, to get my board up there quickly. The direction change back towards the beach must happen quickly. If it happens too slow, that maneuver won't be successful. The faster that we can rotate and look back down to the beach, the more successful that re-entry will be. Okay, at this point we've covered all of the key things, but the difference between a surfer at an advanced level who can perform maneuvers that look really extreme, they're fast, they're powerful, they're critical. What's the difference between them and you at this stage? Well, they probably have more speed, they're probably performing their maneuvers on more critical sections, and that's a big difference here. We've been performing carves on fatter, flatter sections, and that's where we start to perform maneuvers because it's more forgiving and it's easier to learn there. If we try to do carves on big, steep sections, I can guarantee it wouldn't work for you. So we take our time, and the key here is to perform your maneuvers slowly and a little bit more drawn out. They're longer maneuvers. But as you get more comfortable and you get more speed and you can maintain it and control it, well, now we can start to be a bit more aggressive. So our maneuvers happen quicker when the section allows for it. And now that's all about you learning about section selection and when you can push harder and when you can't push as hard. A common saying is, if fat, cut back. So if it's fat and flat, that's kind of a key to you, that you need to draw your maneuver out, keep things a little bit slower and a little bit longer. But when you see a steeper section and you've got more speed, well, now we can look at maneuvers like snaps. Using this wave as an example, it's the same wave I used at the start of the video, and I did make mention of this last maneuver being very similar to a carve but more critical. And it's more critical because I had more speed and I performed it on a steeper section, but the key to making that more critical is exploding at my back leg. And I'm actually transitioning my weight now from my front leg to my back leg and then back to my front leg again. It happens very quickly and very fast, and it's a new skill that you add in to certain times in your maneuvers. You add it in at the end of a carve, or you add it in at the end of a re-entry to blow the tail on a re-entry or to slide the tail on a carve. This skill comes all about timing and all about compression and extension as we introduce a new form of weight transition. Instead of heel to toe, now we need to go from front foot to back foot and then back again. This creates weightlessness in the tail of the board and allows it to get loose and perform more snapping maneuvers. If we have a look at some point of view footage, you can see what's happening by looking at my legs, and it allows the tail to get weightless. It's the same thing when I want to blow the tail on a re-entry. If we have a look from the beach, you can see what happens. If I didn't explode my back foot out the back and I didn't make that weight transition from my front leg to back leg and back to my front leg again, it would be a very different turn. The tail wouldn't be released and it would be more like a slap of the surfboard hitting the lip and coming down rather than blowing the tail out. This is a skill that's starting to head towards more of an advanced level, but it's something that you can start to introduce when you can perform basic carves successfully and you're looking at trying to progress your surfing even further. You can see in these examples on my backhand, the same thing's happening. This is a setup for a standard backhand re-entry, but the difference here is that I'm going to push out my back leg. And you can see that as I've done that, I've released the fins, but I've also got more of a snappier maneuver. So it's not as long and drawn out as a carve like this. Now it's much shorter and sharper. These kind of snappier maneuvers require you to use compression and extension much quicker now. You need to drop low once you finish that explosive part of the maneuver to give you more control of that board as you come out of that maneuver. Let's break down some point of view footage now. You can see I'm at the bottom of the wave and I'm looking for that steep section. This section right here is perfect for a backhand re-entry. Now if I want to make it snappier, or what we would call a fin release, what I need to do is put my board up like I would for a re-entry and then make a very fast change of direction back down towards the bottom of the wave, pushing out my back leg. On the way, as I'm making that twist back down towards the beach, I'm exploding out my back leg and dropping low. It's the same thing again if we want to make a carve snappier. In this example here, you can see that being done. So I'm putting it on rail, but it's a steeper section, so the snap is shorter and sharper and more powerful instead of being longer. So you can see that what's happening is that change of direction happens much quicker, much faster, and much more explosively. Once you feel like you're at a level where you can perform carves, you can perform roundhouse cutbacks, you can perform re-entries, and maybe you're starting to introduce more snappier versions of all of these maneuvers, well, the next thing, and the icing on the cake really, is linking these maneuvers together. And the way that we do that, and what we're aiming for, is to do it with flow. And flow is basically limiting the amount of downtime between your maneuvers, limiting any sort of pumping or flapping about. You want to try and link it so that you do a maneuver straight into a bottom turn, back into another maneuver, into another bottom turn, with very little downtime. Of course, there's a lot of other things that need to happen in order for us to be able to do that. We need to make sure that we're catching waves that allow us to do that. We need to make sure that we can generate speed, that we're performing the right maneuvers in the right sections to allow us to generate speed and maintain that speed for the duration of the wave. It's the end goal for us, but it's something that we should work towards. Because when you're surfing with flow, I don't reckon that your surfing has ever felt that good. And what comes next from this point, well, that's totally up to you. But these are the building blocks for an intermediate level surfer to progress to wherever they decide to, whether it's to stay at that current level or take it to the next level.
For me, as a surfer and a surf coach, if I could see someone performing speed generation, they're performing bottom turns, carves, roundhouse cutbacks, re-entries, and now they're starting to perform snaps and sharper, more critical maneuvers on bigger, steeper sections, well, I would say that you are absolutely an intermediate level surfer at this stage. So for me, if we look back on this video, I feel like we have covered all of the key skills, all of the key maneuvers that you need to get from a beginner level surfer to an intermediate level surfer. But remember, it takes time and it won't happen like that. By the end of this video, clearly you won't be at an intermediate level, but you will know what you need to do to progress your surfing to that level. Guys, thanks for watching the video today. I hope that it has helped break down some of those key pointers that you guys need to work on and those techniques so that you can progress from a beginner to an intermediate level. Remember that it doesn't happen quickly, but knowing what to do and doing it consistently will get you there as fast as you can. If you want help taking your surfing to the next level, we do offer surf coaching face-to-face. We're based in South Australia, but we can travel around Australia if required. And for those of you who are international, but you still want to work with us, you can access video analysis online. So if you can get footage of yourself surfing, you can send it to me and I'll be able to analyze it and send you back a detailed analysis of your surfing and what you need to do to progress on your current level. You can find out more about all of this on our website at www.thesurfersjourney.com.au.